and I'm going to set that aside. Next, I mix my dry ingredients. So I'm going to add my 2 teaspoons of baking powder, my 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and I like to sift them all together rather than just mix them. I feel like it gets the lumps out and it kind of mixes everything nicely. So I'm going to take this is my maternal grandmother's sifter. It's an antique.
Excuse me, Sharon, can I just interrupt for a moment?
Sure.
We have a request that you go a little bit slower.
Oh, sure.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so I will wait because I'm going to go ahead and start my sifting, but I will repeat the measurements just to make sure that everybody's caught up. So we have our sugar, which is a cup of sugar, a 1/2 cup of margarine, and 1 egg, and 2 tablespoons of orange juice. And that all gets sort of creamed together. And then the next step would be to take the dry ingredients and mix those together. So the dry ingredients are 2 1/4 cups of flour, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, and 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And then now we're going to combine those things. So I like to combine them in my sifter. I feel like it distributes the baking powder, the salt, it gets any lumps out. So I'm just putting this all in, the last bits here. And you don't have to do this. It's not an obligatory step, but I like it. Oops. And there, I managed to get it on the counter. And as I do it, I can actually see, and I'll try to hold it up for the camera, but I don't know if you can see in here, but there's a few at the bottom here, there's lumps, and those are the baking powder. So I just take them and I squeeze them in my fingers, and it distributes them and presses them out, because sometimes they don't make their way through the sifter. You don't want to have little lumps of baking powder in your cookies. It certainly doesn't look pretty, and doesn't taste too good either. So I'm going to take this little bit of flour that I managed to spill. Okay. So now we're going to mix them. Just gently mix your wet ingredients and your dry ingredients. And I do it with a spoon up until I reach a point where it just really is better to switch to your hands. It'll come together. And you can use a Mix Master if you have the nice KitchenAid. I happen to have a Sunbeam. But I don't know, I just like the tactile method here, just using my hand, the guns. So this recipe that I'm using here tonight is, why are the lights flash? I don't know if we're having a electrical issue. Our lights are flashing here. So this recipe is the recipe that belonged to my 4th grade teacher. I went to a Hebrew day school. I grew up in Dallas, and my teacher, Mrs. Alperowitz, one day just brought all the ingredients to school, and we cleaned off our desks and we made Hamantaschen. And I thought this was just the most delicious recipe I had ever had. It's a soft, sweet dough, kind of like a sugar cookie dough. And it's very forgiving if you're not exact on the measurements. and it just bakes really nicely and it keeps really well. So although I would say that the cookies never lasted too long in my house. Okay, so now the dough is really starting to come together. And I'm going to switch and use my hands to knead it and bring it all together. And the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring over a piece of saran wrap, because when I get this formed into a dough ball, I'm going to put it in the saran wrap, close it up, put it in the refrigerator for 15 minutes. Okay. Okay, so I just simply take my clean hands and push the dough together, and I scoop off the sticky stuff from the spoon. And you just give it a little bit of a knead, almost like bread dough, sort of folding it over on itself until you start to see that it's really homogeneous. And it doesn't take too long, but it does take a few minutes. And you can actually sort of feel the difference, the texture, as it becomes a bit less grainy and starts to feel like one homogeneous dough. And it's a very soft dough, but it will firm up in the refrigerator. Wipe down the sides of the bowl, get those last bits of flour. Okay, and I think that's pretty good. So this is what mine looks like. Very soft. Just push your finger down. Okay, and I'm just going to put it in my piece of saran that's too small. So let me go get another piece here and wash my hands. My saran wrap. Okay, there we go. And that's my dough, and I'm going to put it in the refrigerator.
Sharon, we have a couple of questions.
So that concludes the first segment.
Okay.
I'm going to wipe my counter, and I will entertain any of your questions.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a question from Nancy Finkel. She wants to know, is there a reason why you don't use vanilla in your recipe?
You know, I do use vanilla in some of my other flavors of cookies, but I've never used it in the plain, I call it the classic dough. I've just always followed that recipe, and I never really used it. I do think that it gets a little bit of flavor from the orange juice. You know, one thing I didn't mention was the order of the ingredients, and that's important. You know, really, it's a chemistry reaction. It's very similar to the lava volcanoes. You know, where you put in the vinegar, you have the baking soda, and then it explodes. So in this case, we have a base, which is our baking powder, and we have an acid, which is our orange juice. And the orange juice has double duty because it does give it a subtle flavor, but it also provides the acid. And so the reaction of the acid and the base, the baking powder and the orange juice together is what's going to give the leavening to your Hamantaschen cookie. So if you just throw everything together in a pot and that baking powder is sitting next to the orange juice, a lot of times it'll sort of, you'll see it. You can actually physically see it start to bubble and foam, and it's using up that leavening. So always remember when you look at recipes, a lot of times the order of the ingredients are important. So.
Good to know. Now we have another question. Jody Michelson wants to know, do you use margarine to make it parve, or could you use butter?
Yes, you can absolutely use butter. I use margarine because that way it's parve.
Okay, good. And another question, I'm sure it'll be coming up, is Lee Moss wants to know, should the baking sheet be lined with parchment paper?
Yes, so we're not there yet.
We're not,
yes,
right, okay.
I line mine with parchment paper. You can also use the silpat mats. Those are the silicone mats. Those are really good too. But it just, I think it really depends. I think the parchment paper works a little better than the mat because if you like just a little bit of crispness on the bottom, you'll get more of that with the parchment paper directly on the hot tray than you will with the silpat mat.
Okay, and we have another question from Catherine Fink. How long will the dough keep in the refrigerator?
That's a great question. So that actually relates to the leavening. So I usually, if I make a dough, I use it within 24 hours because I find that after 24 hours, even though the dough is safe to use, as long as it's been refrigerated, immediately after it was made, I find that it just doesn't rise as well as if you use it within 24 hours. So my advice is, if you're not going to use it right away or within 24 hours, just take it, make it, and freeze it. And you can take it out of the freezer and let it come to temperature in the fridge, after a few hours, or even on your counter, you can let it sit out for an hour, and then use it and it'll rise just fine.
Okay, and one other question, can you use any kind of flour, or are you more partial to one than another?
Yeah, so yes and no. So I have gluten-free Hamantaschen, and those I use specific gluten-free flours. As I use coconut flour with them. I use flour that contains tapioca and some potato flour. I have another one that has nut flour in it, but they don't have the gluten, and so you have to add other things to sort of help make them stick together. So I add xanthan gum in order to act as a binding agent. Otherwise, they end up just being very crumbly. So there are other flours. As far as wheat flours, there's pastry flours that you can use. It's just a really fine ground. There are, I suppose you could try, there's hemp flour. I've experimented with the hemp flour just to see, with all the CBD rage that's going on. I thought, oh, that might be kind of an interesting Hamantaschen. It didn't taste very good, but with some.
And then one other question from Nancy Finkel, is Smart Balance similar to Earth Balance?
Yes, they're very similar. Yes.
Thank you. Okay, we're all set unless anyone else has any questions.
I guess I would say back in the day when everything contained trans fats, I always thought the Fleischmann's unsalted margarine made the best cookies, but I don't know that it was so heart healthy.
Okay, I think we're all caught up with the questions. Thank you.
So I'm going to just give you a brief overview. I will be honest, I sort of repurposed the slideshow. I had been asked to speak at an organization's event, so it's a little bit more business focused. But I hope you find it interesting, and it talks a little bit more about the business that I've created through these Hamantaschen. So
great. Someone just came in with, can you use parchment paper in a gas oven?
Oh, I don't see why not, but I don't have a gas oven.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
My sister has a gas oven. She uses parchment paper, so I'm going to say probably yes.
It's Ilana. I do it all the time. Not a problem. Just don't go over 400, 425, or it might burn depending on the paper.
But even in an electric oven, the same thing. If it's that hot, it'll make the parchment paper dried out and brittle and brown. Okay, here we go. Can everyone see? Okay, are the slides showing up correctly?
Yes, we can see them.
Okay, so I probably should have entitled this From the Scalpel to the Spatula. As you had mentioned, I was a surgeon first and then started pursuing this hobby of mine, the baking of these particular cookies. So I'm gonna just give you a brief overview, my personal background, a little bit of how I came, the things I had to think about as I was deciding whether or not to pursue this as a business, both on a macro level and then on a micro level. So this is a pictogram of my life, starting at the top, the upper left. I'm originally from Texas. I grew up in Dallas, where I went to a Hebrew day school. And when I finished, I went on to Texas A&M University. I spent a lot of years studying. If you really think about it, I was probably in school, technically school, for at least 21 years, and then additional residency training for another 5+ years after that. So it wasn't until I was 31 years old that I was actually finished with all my schooling. After going to Texas A&M, I went to University of Texas Medical Branch, where I went to medical school. And then I moved up to Chicago to go to University of Illinois, where I did my general surgery residency. There in Chicago, in the next row, I met my Prince Charming from Skokie, Illinois. And after we got married, we moved to New York, where I completed a fellowship in breast cancer surgery at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center. So once that was done, then we decided to start our family, and we had 2 really cute kids who are now 2 really cute grown adults. My daughter, Erica, who is my IT support today, who lives in New York and works in PR, and my son, Ethan, who is in the music business and works in Nashville. And I will say, as much as I've hated this pandemic and as much heartache and sadness as it's brought to the world, there has been a silver lining for my husband and myself to have both of them here working from home for the past year. So that's just me being selfish. So after New York, we moved back to Chicago, where I started in practice, and I spent a total of 18 years in Chicago. And I spent most of that time nagging my husband that there were better places to live than Chicago. And if there's anything I can say, it is that nagging works, because after 13 years of marriage, we finally moved to the other promised land, which is where I live now in Florida. And after getting everyone settled here for briefly, then I decided to go back to work, and I joined the staff of the hospital here, and I spent about 5 years in practice here. And at that point, my kids had graduated and moved on. The house was empty. My husband had sold his business, and we both wanted to travel. There was a point in time that I felt like, you know, I've always had this idea, and if I'm going to do it, it's not going to be easier than when I'm 65 than when I'm 55. So I decided to pivot and see if I could make a go of it. So in doing that, I started to think about what were my hobbies and interests. And if I pivoted, how much training would be required in order to go in a new direction? Because I had spent quite a long time in training and I wasn't necessarily sure I wanted to go for more training. I had to think about this idea and whether or not it was truly a hobby or if it did have some commercial viability to it. I thought about the location. We were living in Port Orange, Florida, which is a tiny hamlet suburb of the giant city of Daytona Beach. And I'm being sarcastic there. So they're just, it's a small town. There are not a lot of Jewish people here. And, you know, what type of business would I be able to do? I would have to educate everyone on what a Hamantaschen was first. So I started to think about the business and how I would organize it. Would it be a retail store like a bakery? Would it be wholesale? Would I need a brick and mortar location, or could I just do it as an internet-based company? And these things led me to think about the costs and the benefits. How much money was I willing to spend on this endeavor? And would I need to go raise funds in order to make it go? And then I had to think about the micro level as I made those decisions. I had to think about a production facility. Where was I going to do this? Was I going to try to do this here locally? Was I going to try to do it somewhere in New York or Miami, somewhere with a larger Jewish population, and then try to run it from afar? If I did it locally, what permits would I need? I had to think about food safety certification. There was a lot of regulatory things I needed to learn. This was a whole different field for me. I had to think about the legal issues. What type of organizational structure would I need? I had to think about marketing. I'd never done marketing in my life. Now suddenly I had to learn all these different things about print versus internet. I had to learn about segmentation, targeting, all these things I had never heard of. I had to learn about positioning of my product, how to get it in front of the right eyes. I had to think about packaging. That was kind of fun, but all these questions suddenly occurred to me. What style should I use? What colors should I use? How big should it be? What shape should it be? Is the cookie going to be visible or not visible? How much does it weigh? How much is it going to cost? I had to think about shipping, which is absolutely exorbitant. And in a small town, there was an extra problem because shipping here, if I drop it at the post office, it doesn't just go, it has to first go to Orlando and then get sorted in Orlando, which adds an extra day and it adds extra costs compared to being in a city hub, like being in Detroit. I then had to think about a website because I had decided that maybe an internet-based business would be best. So then I had to learn how to design a website. I had to, because hiring somebody to do it would be really expensive. What were the ongoing expenses of having a website? The transaction fees. I needed help with keeping the site running and to keep it running smoothly when things came up. And finally, there were the administrative tasks, maintaining compliance with all the regulations and bookkeeping. You know, I had always had people who did that for me. So it was a whole new world. And it was a lot of hats that I had to wear. So it took about 2 years to go from my great idea into what is now my Homeys Gourmet Hamantaschen. And a lot of people ask me, why did I pick that name? And I will tell you the reason is, well, there's two reasons. One is when I grew up in Texas, maybe it was the accent of the people, but they didn't call them Hamantaschen, they called them Hamantaschen. So I needed a name for it that would stick. I found here that when I would tell people what my business was or tell them about the cookie, or they would see the cookie as a written word, it was such a long ethnic name that they wouldn't even attempt to try to pronounce it. So I just shortened it into my Homeys and started calling them Homeys. and it stuck. And so people who were not Jewish, who had never heard of Hamantaschen, picked it up. And then over time, they got more comfortable and familiar with the word Hamantaschen, and now they do say that. But at least in the beginning, it seems like a name that people seem to remember, and it's sticky, and I like that. Oh, wait, go back one, sorry. Yeah, no. So excuse me just one second. Yeah, did it skip?
It's this one.
Okay. So so when you think about Hamantaschen, you have to wonder, where on earth did this cookie come from, and how did it get associated with Purim? So I started researching it, and leave it to the Jews to come up with a cookie to remember a near annihilation. I always loved these cookies, and I've been making them, as I said, since I was about 10 years old. When I researched it, probably the best explanation that I found was that the cookies originated around the Middle Ages from the Jews who were in Europe. There is a German pastry called Hamantaschen, and that pastry still exists. And it's basically a poppy seed pocket. Mun means poppy seed, and Taschen means pocket. And so I think what happened was that the Jews sort of saw this cookie and liked the wordplay of Haman, and took it as Hamantaschen. And they started filling them not just with poppy seeds, but with apricot, with raspberry later on, with prune filling. And those became sort of the 4 pillar flavors of these cookies. When I grew up, we were taught Hamantaschen is Haman being the villain of the Purim story, that he wore a 3-cornered hat, and that's why the cookies are shaped this way. I've also heard that it was Haman's ears were shaped this way, and then that Haman had pockets on his clothes shaped this way. But the best explanation that I've found has been that it originated from the European cookie, and that one just makes sense to me. It was the first references to the cookie back in the Middle Ages. So back in the 1970s, when I was growing up, if you wanted cupcakes, you could get a vanilla cupcake or a chocolate cupcakes. And maybe you had pretty frosting on it. If you wanted M&Ms, you could get plain or peanut. And if you went on the airlines, you could get there was one tray of food that they served. And I remembered that. And now there's just been a total sea change. And it's all about diversity and flavors. So now when you go to get a cupcakes, there are hundreds of cupcake flavors. There's creme brulee cupcakes. There's watermelon flavored cupcakes. There's any flavor you would want, peanut butter and chocolate, anything you could imagine. And I saw what happened with the explosion of cupcakes and the way all these cupcake shops just sprung up. And I saw what happened with M&Ms, that now instead of just 2 flavors, they come in 7 flavors. And now when you travel on an airline and you need a meal, you have not 1 or 2 to choose from. There are 10 different meal choices that you can have. And so I like that. And I thought, why not take those traditional flavors and turn them into some more exotic gourmet flavors? And I spent about a year in my kitchen, maybe a little longer, simply learning the chemistry of these cookies, of the baking, learning about water activity and moisture migration. I took classes, I took business classes. I did everything I could to educate myself, and I just tried and repeated. And eventually I came up with a number of recipes that I really enjoyed, and in my taste testers also gave them the thumbs up. So I took, for example, a brownie. I love brownies, and I tried to think of how I could turn my brownie dough, which is liquid, into a shapeable cookie. And I did the same thing with with a graham cracker dough so that I could create a s'mores Hamantaschen flavor. And another one was the pecan shortbread dough and changing that so that I could make it into a shapeable cookie. And the same with the chocolate chip dough. So the things that were important to me, I wanted to make sure they had all natural ingredients. I didn't want to use corn syrup. I try to use organic as much as possible. I wanted them to be delicious, and I wanted them to be unique flavor pairings, like white chocolate macadamia nut cookie with a key lime filling. They were artisanal. They're made by hand. I didn't want them to be exactly the same as each other where they look like they're machine made. I wanted the fruit fillings to be made from fresh fruit. And so I learned how to make fresh fruit fillings. And every summer I get apricots when they come out, and I make them into filling, or sometimes I freeze the apricots and then make the filling just before Hamantaschen season so that it's fresh. I don't use any preservatives, and I did create some gluten-free options. And now in the pipeline, I'm working on my second most request, my current request, I should say, and that is to try to create a sugar-free option. I will say this, they're cookies, they're not carrots. So if you want something healthy, you know, it's a treat, just everything in moderation. So this is my list. It's found on the back of the box. When you order, there are the classic flavors, the ones that that everybody knows and loves, except for turtle. We got rid of turtle. Just like Ben & Jerry's has a flavor graveyard in Vermont, turtle, the classic turtle made it into it got killed and it went into the flavor graveyard. Just wasn't popular. Along with strawberry, also not popular, although very tasty. The chocolate turtle still is there, and that's very popular. This is a picture of the classic apricot. This is a picture of the apricots when I bought them after being washed. One thing that's important that I would say that I've learned is when you do get the fruit, like the citrus, for example, when I buy the limes for the key lime, or when I buy the lemons for the lemon filled, those fresh fruits that you buy in the grocery store are covered with a protective wax coating that happens to contain an ingredient called thiobendazole. Thiobendazole is an antifungal agent, and it's very useful in people who are sick, but it's also used in our fruits and vegetables when they're shipped in order to extend their shelf life and preserve them. So I would suggest that if you buy citrus at the grocery store, before you cut it, to put a slice in your water or something like that. I always run all my citrus, I pour boiling water over it first in order to get that layer off. And then I wash it with a fruit wash, a soapy fruit wash, to get off any residue. So that's just an aside. So this is just a final picture of some of the cookies that I make. And that's my website at the bottom, myhomeys.com. And I think that's it. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. And we can all go get our dough out of the fridge right now.
Brenda, do we have any questions?
No, I think we're up to speed on everything right now.
I think we had a few. I think we had some raised hands that I don't know what the questions were. Jennifer
I
Tepper.
think they were answered already.
Okay, if you do have questions, everybody, if you put it in the Q&A, it's easier for us because the raised hands are a little hard to find and things can get lost in the chat. And we'd love to be able to answer them.
Okay. So are we good to go?
Yes, thank you.
All right. Make it so that I see what they're seeing.
You have to start talking.
Okay. So now we're ready for the second or the third phase of tonight's program, and that is the rolling out the dough. So I have my dough here. It's still quite soft, but it is cold. And I'm going to go over just briefly with you some of the fillings that I like and some sort of tricks of the trade. So when it comes to fillings, I personally, even though it has corn syrup in it and it does have sodium benzoate in some of them, potassium sorbate, so it does have some preservatives. But I find that the Solo brand fillings work particularly well in the Hamantaschen. They bake nicely, they're very flavorful, they taste good. So that, and they're easy to use. So that I personally endorse, I like. I also like Nutella, and I get it in these big tubes through US Foods, food service. But it works particularly well because I can just snip off the tip and then put a little bit in the center. But you can also use several implements. So these are just little piping bags that you can pick up anywhere, Michael's, Joanne Fabrics, Hobby Lobby. You can order them online, but they're very easy to use. And I have one filled. Most of the time, I find you can fit them. Just take a cup, pop it in the cup. Put the edges down here like this. And they hold about 1 can of Solo filling. In it goes. And that's what I have here. This one's already ready to go. Now the other option, and this is something that I love because I always love having the right tool for the job. So this is made by Wilton, and it costs maybe $14, something like that. They have them all sorts of places. Anywhere they have a lot of cake decorating things. So again, Michael's or Walmart even carries it, but it's like a little gun. It comes with a few tips. You can do it's multiple pieces. I don't know if you can see this little tip here. This tip fits inside this piece, which then screws onto this piece, and then you fill this in here. And it works out that 1 batch of dough will make about 20 or so 3-inch cookies. And this will dispense about the amount of filling you will need, almost to the cookie, of to complete 1 batch of dough. So it all seems to work. They must have known my recipe when they designed this. I like to work on a mat, a silpat mat. I happen to have marble countertops, and they're very soft, and they scratch and they etch, and so I always work on a mat. And then last, to make the cookies, you'll need your rolling pin. There's different types. I actually like this one. It's a little wide. If you can see, it's a little wider in the center and narrower. But when you roll out the dough, it tends to just very subtly push it away from the middle. And surprisingly, when you roll it, it actually comes out very even. You know, you would have thought it would be more like a crater, but it doesn't. What else? Some people like to put things in their dough. I find if you're going to put chocolate chips in the dough, I personally like the minis. Chocolate chip minis, because they get distributed really nicely and they don't make chunks that are difficult to fold as you fold your cookie. And then lastly, the cutters. So I have a variety of cutters. These I particularly like. They're all different sizes. This is a larger one that I'm using tonight just for the purposes of demonstration. But usually I think a 3-inch cookie, a 3-inch wheel, a circle, really works about the best. It provides you with a cookie that'll take a few bites to eat, but it's not so much that it's so sweet and so overpowering. And so it just seems to me to be about the right size. This one I like because it's fluted, and I think it makes it pretty when you cut the dough and you. So let's see. And then there's this one here, which has a little hole in it, and you just push down and it sends the air out so you don't create an air gap. All right, so let's get started. We're gonna take and we're gonna roll out our dough. And I like to roll it out to about a 1/4 inch thickness. Get this out of the way. Get this out of the way. And that orange one. Okay, so to just make some circles here. There we go. And then we just pull away the excess dough. And you can see here, the circle, see the thickness, it's about a 1/4 inch.
Sharon, we've had a few questions about whether they should be flouring the surface or flouring the rolling pin, especially if they don't have a mat.
Yes, if you don't have a mat and the dough is sticking, then you can put down a little bit of flour. I try to be cautious about how much flour I use, because I find if you use too much, it does make your cookie dry. So absolutely use sprinkle a little flour on your, I don't need to. That's one of the beauties of the silpat mat, because you know, unless your dough is really wet and sticky, it won't stick. Okay, so we've got our wheels here. And now I'm just going to snip off the tip here. And just be mindful of, if you use these bags, to make sure you grab that tip so that it doesn't end up in somebody's cookie. So then you just make a nice dollop in the center. You know, you can use a spoon. I just find it to be messy. And I just put I just find the piping bag to be nice and easy to use. Okay, and now we're gonna fold. So can you bring the camera just a little bit closer? There we go. So there's different ways of doing it. Some people like to push one side down and push the other side over on top of it. Kind of like that. And it kind of, it's pretty. It does leave like a little pocket. So it leaves kind of a folded effect. It covers your filling. I prefer to simply just press the edges together like that. And sometimes I'll just fold the top and squish the bottom edges. Fold and then lift up the bottom and squeeze. That. Do a few more. And it just traps the filling, but it's not so trapped that you don't see any of the filling. Sometimes people make Hamantaschen where the filling is almost hidden. And I prefer it to show. I just think it looks prettier. And you do want to make sure it has a good pinch so that it doesn't unfold inside. So when it comes to fillings, some people like to use jams or jellies. I don't recommend jellies. I find that the jellies just have too high of a water content, and they tend to seep into the dough and makes it soggy. So I think if you're going to use something like that, a jam works well. If you like lemon, there's lemon curd that tastes really good. So this is something that I made just to show you because it does make for cute cookies, but I personally think it's wasteful, so I don't really do it that often. So what I did here is I took the Hamantaschen dough and I divided it up into 5 colors, five amounts. I actually weighed it to make sure each one was equal. And then I used food coloring. If you're gonna do it, the easiest way is to divide up your wet ingredient and put the food coloring in each one and then add your flour to each one. I did it the other way. It takes a little longer, but these will make rainbow Hamantaschen. So what you do is you put each layer into like a loaf dish. And then after it's been melded together, you cut it into a slice. So this is what it looks like. And then you take your rolling pin and you flatten it a little bit, so not quite so thick.
Sharon, someone wanted to know, how much filling do you use? And are you concerned about overrunning?
So I use about, it's about 15 grams of filling. I think that the way I would describe it is, here, I can show you. You want to have the filling in the center, and you want to have a nice, 1/4 inch rim at least of cookie dough on the outside of the filling. If it's beyond that, it just gets messy and it won't stick together when you try to close it. So these are the rainbow Hamantaschen, and what you can do with these, I think I'll show you here in a second. Let's do a couple of these. These are just fun to do with kids. So this is what the disc looks like here. Here. And I'm going to take here, this would probably be a good one to show you. I'm going to take some Nutella and I'll pipe the Nutella on here, and then you can kind of get an idea of how much I like to put in. Thank you. All right, so here's my Nutella. And there we go. It's probably a teaspoonful. You see that? So you can see I have a nice wide band of cookie on the outside. So I'm going to squeeze this. And this is what it looks like with the front pinched. And then I'm going to turn up the, I think it's blocking that light. Turn up this bottom part. And then this is what the finished, it'll look like a little rainbow Hamantaschen. Kind of cute. It's fun.
Very cute. Speaking of children, have you ever, we have a question from Pamela Gordon. Have you ever used any kind of candy? And what would be the best kind to use?
Yes, so you can use, that's the fun part, the creative part of Hamantaschen. You can really use, you want to put these in the oven? You could really use just about anything you want. We're going to put ours in the oven now, and they're going to need, at a 375 oven, they're going to need to stay in there for 15 to 17 minutes, depending on, your oven and the type of tray that you use. So for candy, I like caramel. I think that if you use the sheets that come out in the fall for caramel apples, I think those work really well. They can't be on top. They have to be sort of underneath, but those work well. I mostly use, fruits, nuts, things like that. What I have found is when you use chocolate chips, some people I've seen, they'll use a Hershey's Kiss in the center, and you can do that, and it's a pretty look, but once it cools, it's not soft. The chocolate becomes very hard and dry a little bit, and it can burn if you don't watch it. So I'm not a big fan of just using hard chocolate. That's probably why I like the Nutella so much, because with the hazelnut spread and the oils in it, it does stay soft. I had experimented with some chocolate mint flavors. I tried using crushed peppermints on the top as a garnish. It really did not work well. You can use M&Ms. M&Ms work great. Those are fun. What other kind of candy? Is there a particular candy that you have in mind that you were curious about?
No, it was just a question that was posed to us about, I guess, because of the children aspect of the rainbow.
Right. Yeah, so the rainbow dough works really nicely. One thing you can do, you could do Nutella with a few sprinkles on top. The other thing you can do, you can get melting chocolate, and after you've cooked the cookies, after you've baked the cookies, you can dip them in the melting chocolate and then use colored sprinkles to decorate them. They're very pretty that way. It looks very fancy.
I'm using this chocolate carve.
Oh.
Chocolate carve.
Oh yes, Yvette has, there is a par of chocolate. I think it's from Israel. I
Yes,
don't remember the name.
Israeli. Oh, can you see it?
Yeah, it's similar to Nutella. It just doesn't have any dairy in it.
Right.
And then someone was just curious about how many do you make a year of the Hamantaschen?
I make close to 10,000 a year.
Wow. Okay. And a lot of people have commented they really like your website.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I also sell on Etsy. So I don't know. Etsy has like a little bit lower shipping cost. But.
Well, you'll make sure to give us your website.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Anybody who has any questions, you're welcome to just email me directly. This is sort of a little, this is kind of how the cookies come when they're packaged. Can you tilt the camera just a little bit? Otherwise they're gonna fly off So this is, they come in a pack of 6. This is the classic variety pack with the classic fruit flavors. This is the chocolate variety pack, and then there's the specialty variety pack right there.
Yeah.
I don't actually sell the rainbow ones online just because they're very labor intensive and a lot of artificial colors, which I don't like the food coloring so much, but and you also lose a lot when you go to cut it. You know, everything around it is, I mean, I guess you could make tie-dye.
And no, thank you so much. We so appreciate it, Sharon. It's been wonderful and we've all enjoyed it so much. And we appreciate you taking the time out to do this for us.
Well, it was my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. And if anybody has any questions, you can reach me through my website. I have an email. It's myhomeys.com@gmail.com, or you can give me a call. It's 256-3-HOMEY'S.
Great. Thank you so much, Sharon.
Thank you. Happy
Thank you.
Purim, Chag Sameach.
And we
Hi,
have
Tanya.
just, the chat is just full of people thanking you and telling you how much they enjoyed the evening.
Well, thank you.
So
Thank
before we
you.
turn it over to Brenda, with.
I just have a couple of announcements. We wanted to announce that Zedek members are going to be baking Hello Together online, and everyone is welcome to join. They're going to meet on Zoom to learn from Pam Turkin of Baking with Pam. She's going to have a lot of tips and tricks and things about braiding. And they're going to be baking to donate to Heart in Detroit. It's a nonprofit organization working to feed and assist the homeless in Detroit. So they're going to be doing this during the contactless Michelot Minot pickup on Sunday, February 21st. You can drop off. It can be even a challah that you buy. If you don't feel like making one, you can just drop off one that you've purchased. And if you go online, there are videos that'll help you learn how to make challah. So they're hoping that you'll help them with their collection. Also, Sisterhood is having a great matzah challenge, and we're doing it for Yad Ezra on Sunday, March 7th from 11:30 to 1. And we're hoping to collect 1,000 boxes of matzah. We would like kosher for Passover matzah, and it's a drop and drive event at the Zedek parking lot. So it's contactless. So when you go do your Passover shopping, please buy a box to donate. We'd really appreciate it. We also are going to need people to help us collect the boxes in the parking lot. They would just need to keep their trunks open. And then if they could help on the following day, on Monday, March 8th, between 3 and 5, if you could help drop it off at Yad Ezra. We'd really appreciate all your help. And you guys are wonderful. You always help us and give us great participation. So we appreciate it.
All right, people, check your ovens, make sure they don't burn.
While you're doing that, with respect to the drivers, if you can drive, you can email sisterhood@shaarey.org and let them know, and they will pass it on to us and we'll be in touch. And in this bowl are not Hamantaschen, but are all the names of the people who registered for this event. Yvette, we can do it like on TV. Tell the folks what they could win.
You will be the lucky winner of a variety pack of gourmet Hamantaschen from my Homeys. So, drum roll.
I don't know why they keep stirring, but it gives me something
All
to
right.
do.
So
My
one lucky winner, you must be present to win.
Is Ella Modell. I don't think I saw her name there.
All right, so
Wait a
answer,
minute, is Ella, let's look,
claim your prize on the Q&A.
if you're here, I'm just
If
looking.
you're here, you must be present to win.
I do not see Ella on the list of attendees. So
All right,
roll that drum again.
drum roll again.
And just so you know, we're not in the bowl. Mindy Salzberg Siegel, you
All right.
are here.
All right, claim your prize.
I'm allowing you to talk. Do you want to say it?
Who's our lucky winner?
Mindy Salzberg Siegel, you can unmute. And
Is she allowed to unmute now?
yeah,
Thank you. I got all excited, forgot to unmute myself. Thank you.
Great.
I think we have your
So
information.
you'll have to email us, I guess, your address because
We
we'll
have it in
have
the registration.
it shipped.
We have it.
Okay.
You-
We
I
have-
mean, I'm happy to do that. We're to
You
Sisterhood.
can go online on my Homeys website and pick out which variety pack you want
Oh, okay, so you're.
and just let us know.
Okay, all right, perfect.
You can email us at Sisterhood and and Sharon will let Sharon know your information. Congratulations. What a delicious.
Congrats,
Thank
enjoy.
you. So much fun.
Okay, guys, I think we're gonna finish this portion out. This has been so great and so nice to at least see everybody's names. But I put in the chat the link if you wanna schmooze some more now, and we will open that up as soon as I get off this one. And then if people wanna show their Hamantaschen, we'll all be able to see each other and you can tell us about what you made and whatever else. Sharon, thank you also from us.
Thanks
And
so
also,
much.
Thank you.
Kim is doing well and wanted to let you all know that. And we
We
thank,
miss her.
and she's been here. So
Yeah.
so we miss her and Yvette and Brenda as programming chairs. You did an awesome job putting this together. It's really been.
We got talented family members tapping into their talent, sharing their knowledge with us. Thank you so much, Sharon.
It's a good thing. We'll keep Yvette. She has good relatives. All right, everybody. I think we're going to close it down and I'm going to open up the other one. Just give me a minute. Okay.
Bye, thank you.
Bye, thank you.
Bye.
Allow. Let's see.
Are we supposed to log out now?
I think we have to leave and get.
Don't,
No. She's
just stay.
My homies. That's the name of the business. So guess
I
what?
made parb chocolate, coconut, and walnut. But I just put one pan in there because I want to see how they turn out. I didn't pinch them very well because I wasn't paying attention.
Beth Margot and
Just
Mazel
like
Tov.
congrats.
All right, this is still recording. Do we want to turn it off?
I've spoken to, I texted Alana.
Okay. Should we log out?
There's still 10. Yes, let's log out.
Just leave?
I think so.
All right, thanks.
I'll see you in a minute.
Oh, okay. Oops, I need to see that.